Hi, and welcome to the Insiders by Durham Lane, where we get perspectives from industry thought leaders about strategies that are unifying marketing and sales cycles to help accelerate growth inside your world.
Welcome to the Insiders by Durham Lane, an industry podcast that connects the worlds of marketing and sales, one guest at a time. I'm your host, Richard Lane. I'm co-founder and chief commercial officer of Durham Lane. We're a revenue acceleration agency and we help enterprise customers create always-on channels of meaningful and well-qualified sales opportunities. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Antti Nykänen. Antti is head of marketing for the infrastructure division at AFRY, an international engineering design and advisory company that drives digitalization and sustainability for energy infrastructure and industrial sectors on a global basis. Antti, it's great to have you on the show, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Richard. It's a pleasure. Since I got to know this podcast, I've listened to several episodes now. I'm indeed really glad to be here.
Excellent. As a way to get started, perhaps you could introduce yourself to our listeners so they get a better understanding of who you are before we get into the detail of today's discussion.
Yes, so my name is Antti Nykänen. I'm living in Finland and worked in marketing roughly 20 years, from mobile solutions to Harley Davidson motorcycles. Also been now at AFRY quite a few years. How long? Actually, it depends on slightly how you count it. Years back, I was a marketing manager in an architectural agency, which grew then to be the biggest one in Finland. And one day the company was acquired by AFRY, a global engineering and consulting company. And then one day AFRY was acquired by OF. And as a result of that merger, then came AFRY. AFRY, we are an engineering company. In our division, we work a lot with infra and real estate sector customers. We do not have many like full-time salespeople, but instead it's the department managers, section managers, business unit heads, and so on who do the sales. Richard, this can bring advantages, but also challenges, this kind of a setup. And our people rarely have joined AFRY because they want to sell. It's more like, they are there to design the world's best buildings and bridges and tunnels. You name it. Rarely people like cold calling, but maybe our people like it less than average. And that's the kind of number one thing for me, is how to make that cold call warmer. So if we can do that, then marketing has done its job well.
Well, perfect. That's a great way for us to get into the main content for today's episode of the Insiders, Antti. So thank you for that. I also wonder whether the podcast should be focused on how to make your way through many acquisitions and stay in the same company from your experience, but maybe we can leave that for another day. As co-founder of Durham Lane, we're a demand and lead generation business. Something that I've always been passionate about is, like you, the cooperation and the togetherness or not of marketing and sales. And it's something that we have to work really hard on. And a lot of the Insiders podcast is about that connection between marketing and sales. In your experience through AFRY and other iterations of the business, what are the biggest challenges that you've seen in the connection between those two departments?
I think overall, you can say that the main three barriers, if you like, are the organizational structure or silos. Then the second one, perhaps the attitude. And the third one is the lack of strategic alignment, meaning the strategic targets are not sufficiently broken down to sales and marketing specific joint targets and incentives. So I would say these are the three main concerns that typically are kind of hinder the good, for example, handling of the sales leads.
Yeah. Okay. So silos, the attitude, maybe, I'm a marketer or I'm a salesperson. And then really importantly, the strategy. And I guess there are two things there, aren't there? There's the leadership from the top, but also then the day-to-day activities from people doing the work at all levels of the business. So, demand and lead generation is interesting because you could say it sits towards the top of the sales funnel. So what are your thoughts around how we link sales and marketing together through the lead generation process?
Yeah, there's quite a few things that, of course, you could address. And the organization is, of course, something that you can do something, you can't do something. One of the things, if not going to kind of organizational structure as such, but at least to create the circumstances and responsibilities for lead handling. Sometimes, and this maybe comes to also to the attitude side. So it's easy for us as marketeers to think that, yeah, we now have this campaign up and running and we just measure it by page views and that's the end of story. Or then a salesperson is thinking that they are only interested in leads which they themselves find. If we have at least some loose teams that have some kind of a joint target, so that would be one thing. How we address this challenge at AFRY, it's been now like 12 months as the way it is. So we set some responsible people in the organization who are kind of looking after that the leads in this area will be handled. Not necessarily being handling them themselves, but just taking care and making sure that it will happen. Only by having this kind of a responsible person somewhere lead it. If we now look back, so the net sales coming from the leads compared to what it was last year, so it was 2.5 times bigger.
Okay. You've set up some dedicated people that are responsible for taking the lead and nurturing it and getting it sort of what I would call sales ready. You mentioned at the beginning of the episode that AFRY has lots of salespeople that didn't join the business to sell maybe, but they joined the business to design and to build relationships. So have you created a link between the lead and those individuals?
Yes, and I think what I would say that there's a lot of work to be done still, so we could be much better in all aspects. But I think what works sometimes really, really well is that when we have the responsibility on the right level, when the person is really aware about the expertise within AFRY in that specific customer segment or geography. So it's easier for her or him to assign the leads to a right person, say that, hey, Antti, you are an expert of this topic. Why don't you pick this one up? And hope it also makes life easier in this case for Antti. Because, okay, this is an area that I do know a lot about. It is easier for me to contact that particular customer instead of somebody just randomly throwing you a 10-name list saying that call this.
Yes, yeah, we've all been there, haven't we? So I guess it sounds like you're on this journey, but I know marketing used to be very focused on brand and collateral. I think we talked that in our pre-discussion that, you know, marketing was seen to be brand and the collateral that you might give a interested customer, but these days the buying journey has changed dramatically. It's become much more digital and marketeers are becoming more focused on revenue. Is that something that is happening inside of AFRY?
I would say yes, absolutely. And in short, I think it's a great development. Kind of, forces us as marketeers to show the value for the rest of the organization, if you like. So kind of teaches us to speak the language that is understood in the corner office. I guess it's the topics like return on marketing investment, the value of marketing generated leads. And it's becoming now actually possible to measure all this, which was not possible, say, 10 years ago. So I think it's absolutely good development that marketing nowadays and increasingly is measured by the outcome. The way I see it, the development can raise the value of us as marketeers. Top line growth, it can show that marketing is not only about the icing of the cake. I think this has helped to make the marketing work much more interesting, be in the front line, if you like crafting the competitive advantage, to bringing the customer insight to sales, contributing pricing, and be part of those business critical decisions.
Do you find that is helping with the integration between marketing and sales, Antti, within AFRY? Has that shift in mindset or expectation, has that brought the various departments closer together?
I would say yes. So in a way, now if I think about my own work, for instance, compared to past, so it feels like we're much more now onto the core of the business. Like you said, as opposed to only producing the collateral, it's like now we much have a bigger role what marketing can impact. But of course, it's not something that nobody's giving that bigger role to you, but focus on the revenue and the ability to show the results. So that's something that helps, of course, making this. And but then there's, of course, the other side of the coin. And I think we discussed that it's perhaps not always only focusing on the short term.
Yes.
But it's also the branding part of it. So you just can't ignore it. And if you try to optimize the return on investment on short term, you probably run into problems in the long run.
Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting balance from a marketing perspective, because if you only focus on activities that lead to immediate revenue, then there will be activities that need to be done from a brand build, from a recognition, reputation point of view that don't, in the medium and long term will affect you negatively. So it's about value attribution, and we regularly inside of Durham Lane have discussions around where we spend our time and where we spend our focus and our money, and you have to get that balance right between I guess the tactical and the strategic initiatives, and it has to be connected.
Indeed, and maybe it's one of the things that helps to do that is to kind of keep your eyes on the customer and on the customer journey. So when we keep our eyes on the customer needs, so we are able to keep this, as you say, very, very delicate balance.
Yeah, interesting. And clearly you're a global business. So, I'm talking from a Durham Lane perspective, and we operate in, I think, 76 countries around the world for our customers, but we're predominantly a UK operation. When you become a global business, I think it becomes much more complicated. So one thing that we're interested in the Insiders is how you operate in a global construct as well. So clearly this goes beyond just sales and marketing, but to the whole organization, telling that one story, whether you're in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, the Americas, etc. How have do you have experiences of that in the work that you've done with AFRY?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely the very, very crucial part here, and maybe a story about how not to do this, because I've also learned this kind of a hard way. Right?
Yeah, we often learn the best from the horror stories, don't we?
Yeah, it's like that. Yeah, so years ago, I think it was like 6 years ago, then the marketing automation platforms were really like a new thing. And I was like super convinced that no, yes, we need a marketing automation platform. And this was the time when marketing automation, at least, was mostly unknown for most people. I started to talk about it with the business management and with colleagues and so on. The typical response was like, oh, but that's not perhaps very relevant for our business because our business is so unique. I bet many have heard these words before. Just talked about that and didn't get any traction. But
yeah.
Anyhow, then I purchased it and I was then struggling with the fact that we are going to implement something which nobody really knows and nobody really wants. And how the hell are we going to manage this, or basically how I am going to manage this? And we really, really scratch our head with it. And
yes.
I mean, and I know that it's going to help us not only in marketing but also in sales, and even more in sales actually. But how can we really get into it? And it was a very, very tool-focused approach. And if I'm thinking back today, you just can't emphasize enough the fact or the question, answering the question why. I mean, we have all these good change management frameworks such as AFRY or anything what Lotta has said and all that. But how is it that even we kind of know it in the back of our heads, we still are not putting that into action? And I know this is only like one example of this type tool focus, but even today, all this talk about marketing technology stack and all. I mean, there are great tools available out there, but in the end of the day, it's all about change management and then people and processes to help to do the right thing. And at least, like you said, we are a pretty big organization. We're totally around 17,000 people. So the technology is only an enable, but the foundation is then laid with people doing the right things every day. And like you can have an expensive Ferrari, but if you don't have the skills to drive it, so then the end result will be outright dangerous even. Or you buy a Ferrari and then you can't afford to buy the fuel for it, so then you can't drive.
And the question that myself and I'm sure our listeners will have is, did you renew your expensive piece of marketing technology the following year?
No, actually not, because luckily in the middle, I realized that, okay, this is not going to work now. We need to approach it in a slightly different way. So again, we started to approach it from the customer point of view. how can we help the customer in all touch points? And then this was the story that we were telling internally, that this is how we can impact in these phases. End result, happier customer, the other end result, moving these potential customers forward in the funnel. And that became the story of it. And not mentioning the technology as such.
Right.
It's an enabler in the background, but it is the thing that why we are doing it. Of course, then you need to put it also into your strategic targets, where at the time we had like very ambitious growth targets. And for example, that resulted heavy targets on sales, this many meetings, this many calls, this much sales.
Yes.
And then how we then connected to it that, hey, okay, guys, you have now the target. It's not only that there is the target, but we are also here to help you to reach that target. And that's how we are doing by bringing good quality leads. I've worked also in sales, and it wasn't the nicest feeling when you have that target to have 7 meetings per week or have contacted 7 leads, and you need to present that on Monday morning meeting, and then on Sunday evening you realize that, oh, I have only 5. What can I do? So it was the more or less focusing that how can we help our people to sell. It was not like an internal marketing effort to do something that we can send emails faster, for instance. But it's also true, like you said, that there are differences between different geographies, and that's, of course, one needs to respect. I can see, for example, maybe talking about differences between Finns and Swedes. In Sweden, and now this is a very rough generalization, but I can see that people perhaps sometimes in marketing are more forward-leaning and seeing the opportunities, whereas when you tell a Finn that what could possibly go wrong and here are all the things that can go wrong, then the Finn is happy that, yes, good, they have thought about all these doubts.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, so many cultural differences. That's something else that needs to be thought very, very clearly about when you're building any campaign or running any program, isn't it? So a story there of what not to do, Antti. In terms of, we're very keen to enable our listeners to go away with some actions from our conversation. So what's the one thing that you can share that our audience can take away and action immediately?
I think, and this is not like anything new or fancy or super expensive even, but I think it's something that has been the best thing that I've done in my career. And this is also related to the change management that we discussed. So when we conducted a buyer persona and customer journey mapping workshop, and I think that's what most marketing units do at some point. So with that, we managed to do the most difficult thing to kind of connect the people in marketing, connect the people in sales, getting good feedback from sales that, okay, this is what our customers are like. And also then after that, putting the results into practice after the workshop. So that's apparently not easy as well. And a lot to achieve on that front. But I think there were good things. Like just recently, one of my colleagues has hosted excellent workshops within marketing communications people that this is how you utilize the buyer personas in communications planning and execution, and also even like exercises that let's plan a Google ad for this kind of persona and that kind of persona, and kind of learn to see the possibilities, how to use them in practice.
So what I'm taking from that, Antti, is firstly, bring the various teams together through a very specific activity around the buyer journey, so the personas and how your customers buy from you. And then, as importantly, put it into action post workshop. It's not easy bringing people together. It's not easy running workshops, and it's not easy following up. Yeah. So tackle each of those at a time, and then you'll end up creating some synergies and getting your business to work more effectively together. And that quest for smarketing, as you might call it.
Exactly.
We got a new feature in the Insiders where we go out to our community and ask for some questions. I've got a question here from James, which I think is very relevant to you and your world at AFRY, Antti. So the question from James is, how can you install a selling culture or revenue mindset into organizations that are more product or project management focused?
Excellent question.
We'll just ask him to listen to the first half of the podcast. But any further? Do you have any further thoughts on that?
I think because I can very much relate to that, because I think if you think about AFRY, for instance, so the project management or that kind of it's very core of our company DNA. So now we really again come to this change management question, and the first thing that comes to mind is these processes. So the sales process and the project delivery process need to be very well connected, aligned. So it's clear also from the process perspective that we all play in the same game here, and there is no project execution if nobody sells the project.
Yes,
in a way. And then let's say if we think about the expert organization, so and how people feel the B2B sales sometimes. So quite often it's understood in a way that it's not probably my thing. And the salespersons, they are somewhat different. They are like very pushy and aggressive. And the first thought is that, that kind of second-hand car salesman, isn't it? And then I think that's totally wrong picture. And years back, we have had sales training for managers. We've been discussing a lot about what is B2B sales in an expert organization. And in the end of the day, it turns out that many people are doing it already. They just don't call it sales. It's just, It's somehow like about helping your customer. Like, for example, you're at the customer's construction site and you suggest some improvements when you have had your ears and eyes opened, and customer is happy, they get improvements, and then you get add-on sales. But again, it comes to change management and training part of it. So like training is important part of it. And then even more important, of course, is the management will actually then actively walk the talk after the training.
Yeah, and I think the conversation we had also around marketing being a revenue generation machine as well is a key part to changing culture. If you're measuring your various functions by their ability to create revenue, not only, but as part of it, then you start to change the mindset inside of an organization as well. So some good advice there. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're coming to the end of our conversation, Antti. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. We've got one last question, often the hardest to answer, but we're building the Insiders Spotify playlist, and we ask every guest if they would like to provide us with a song that we can add to the playlist. So what would you like us to add on your behalf?
Yeah, I can understand that this is the hard question, difficult for me as well, but maybe a song by Finnish band Amorphis, and it's called House of Sleep.
House of Sleep by Amorphis. Excellent. Well, it's great to have it by a Finnish band. I will be sure to check them out, and we'll get them added to the growing Insiders Spotify playlist. Antti's been as I said, absolute pleasure. Thank you for appearing on the Insiders. Really appreciate your time today, and I'm sure listeners will get a lot of value from the conversation that we've had.
Richard, big thanks. It was really a pleasure to be here. I really enjoyed the discussion and also the tough questions.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, and thanks to all of our listeners. Thank you for tuning into the Insiders. Please subscribe on your preferred podcasting site to ensure you are notified of all new episodes as and when they're published. And if you'd like to learn more about Durham Lane and our unique method of selling at a high level, visit durhamlane.com for more information. And see you next time.
The Insiders by Durham Lane. Subscribe today to never miss an episode.